Welcome to the Job Shop Show, where we talk with the owners, suppliers, partners, and customers of custom manufacturers. Listen and learn the secrets of top-performing job shops, the tools, techniques, and backgrounds that have made them successful, all in the quest of raising the bar for custom manufacturing. I'm your host, Jay Jacobs. This episode is sponsored by Paperless Parts, connecting buyers and suppliers of custom manufactured parts. The Paperless platform is a secure, ITAR-compliant, cloud-based manufacturing system for suppliers that reduces the amount of time spent on sales, estimating, quoting, administration, and order processing. It offers seamless integration with the accounting and ERP software tools that shops already use, such as QuickBooks, E2, and JobBoss. Paperless Parts was founded with a mission to make manufacturing more accessible by streamlining the quote-to-cash process. Spend less time quoting and more time selling. Hello, friends. Jay Jacobs here with another stellar episode of the Job Shop Show. Today's show is going to be brilliant. We are chatting with Dan Kirby, CEO and co-founder of the Tech Department in the United Kingdom. The Tech Department is a technology implementer specializing in working with UK manufacturers. They believe their future, like all businesses, is digital. Let me repeat that. Their future, your future, like all businesses, is digital. Or put another way, in the 1980s, I heard a quote from an MIT professor, Dr. Bruce Merrifield, which has stuck with me. Innovate, automate, or evaporate. So we are going to talk about implementing technology, hopefully giving you a strategy on how to do it right and highlight the mistakes that are often made. Welcome to the Job Shop Show, Dan.
Well, it's great to have, great to be on the podcast, and thanks for having me. I'm very excited. I'm dialing in from the UK, and it's using technology. So here we are. We're kind of we're living and breathing what we're preaching.
That's right, making communication a lot easier.
Absolutely.
We were introduced by a mutual friend, Ross Thornley, in the UK.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ross and his co-founder have started a company called Adapt AI, which is measuring how adaptable a person and a company is to change. And my thought is, with technology making change happen faster and faster, measuring adaptability makes so much sense because implementing technology at your company means people will have to change. So wouldn't it be great to know who needs to change the most, who needs the help, and beyond that, even knowing how or if your company is ready for change. I could see that you could apply this to your process, to your companies that you're working with up front. What are your thoughts there, Dan?
It's interesting. Adaptability is, if you think about, I mean, I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit of my background, because it might.
Sure.
I'm just going to. This might, as you're talking, I think I started my career. When I left university in the UK, I went to one of the better universities, and I graduated in 1996. And I had never turned on a computer in the entire.
It wasn't a requirement.
It wasn't a requirement. And by the way, I did a history degree, so I actually studied American history. So I studied your country for my college degree. But it was an arts degree, a humanities degree, and I didn't need to turn on a computer. So I now run a technology company and advise manufacturing companies on their strategy to do with technology. But I was an arts graduate. In fact, before I did my history degree, I was going to become a fine artist, a painter. I dropped out. Yeah. Like my father's an artist, as is my godfather, and I came from a very creative, artistic family, and I'm very creative myself. And so I thought I'll become an artist, and I dropped out and became a businessman. So I've come from this kind of arc where I started with fine art, and then humanities and history, and no technical knowledge, and purely by accident, I was young at the time when the dot-com boom was happening. So like most people do, they look at the younger generation and assume that young people know everything that old people don't understand, which is how I got my opportunity. to make initially it was in 1997, and I was working for a company that did PR communications because I can write copy. I'm a copywriter, and my
You probably
boss,
wrote a lot in university.
yeah, exactly that. So I was good at writing, and I thought I'll get a job writing for a living. And my boss was asked, could you do a website for this company? And my boss said, yes, I'm an expert at making websites. We're excellent at that. And of course, we'd never done it before. so I was like this kind of very green young guy who was kind of the youngest in the company. And my boss said, okay, you're young. You must know about this newfangled technology. You make the website. But of course, I had no idea. I couldn't switch on the computer when I graduated. I went to art school. So I kind of had to live, well, I said yes. And this is the story of my life, actually. I say yes to things and then work out how to do it whilst doing it. And I kind of, that's perhaps the definition of innovation is kind of, I don't know, trying things out. So that's how I learned about technology a little bit. And so the point about adaptability is, I think, I've been lucky in my career is that I've been presented with opportunities to kind of learn and make mistakes and innovate and try new ideas out. That's forced me into a path which I probably wouldn't have chosen, but life imposed on me. And what I've learned over that time is to apply these skills in different ways. So the adaptability thing, I think, is kind of fundamental in a world which changes every 6 months, and where your skills and your training may be not entirely appropriate in 5 years' time. So how do you deal with that when you're responsible for your family and for your company and your mortgage payments and all the responsibilities you have as a person? And so I kind of figured that there's learning how to use skills in different ways, working on your adaptability is I think the kind of fundamental part of succeeding in the modern economy as an individual, but also that I would say wider than that is your adaptability as an organization. So it's the people, but then as an organization to see itself in different ways and to adapt to the way the world is, as opposed to the way the world, well, the way you want the world to be. All right. So you kind of, we all want it to be easy, but it isn't.
Right.
And so why deal with reality as it is? And that requires adaptability.
Bunch of thoughts running through my head. So,
right.
Relating to adaptability, the fact that you say yes means that you probably are highly adaptable. That's your default. But there's so many people who the default answer would be no, because it's change, it's scary. And Ross and I had a conversation, and at my manufacturing company, Rapid, we change so often, and we'll get into this a little bit in the discussion on these incremental small improvements that were made consistently, that even people who were not genetically inclined to be adaptable learned to become adaptable. And that was a key question that Ross had for me was, can people learn to be adaptable? And I really saw it happen at Rapid. And it wasn't intentional. It was the team members had to be carried along. They had to learn for us to be successful. We needed to make sure that they were successful, and that meant we unconsciously trained them to be adaptable. So what I like about what Ross is doing is he's saying that it is something that can be measured and that it can be changed, but the people, and whether it's a company or not, have to be identified and measured so that the appropriate tools can be put in place to make that happen, because it all goes back to what your company's philosophy, that all businesses are going digital. That means technology, and implementing technology means change.
Absolutely. And I think this is the heart of this is you don't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah. So adaptability isn't really a thing that you have a choice about. I mean, in some ways, the way I found myself in here was a set of choices, but really it was great training for a world that's only got more like that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky, but this kind of, I think this is the first thing is to accept that that is the reality. You know, if you're running a company of any type, you have to accept that it's going to change, and the future is, whether you like it or understand it, truly is digital. And we all know that because, you know, you look at, I don't know, Blockbuster or Netflix and Uber, and you understand that these have disrupted markets and they've changed entire industries. But you tend to, in particularly more traditional industries, which I think a lot of particularly industrial companies or manufacturing companies can be perhaps not quite as high up the sort of curve of earlier. They're not big early adopters. There's quite traditional manufacturing processes and equipment that you're working with. You can kind of go, well, all right, well, it's not happening right now or next week. And so it's like a classic, it's important. Well, I'm being told it's important. So the world is telling me this is important. I'm reading about this on LinkedIn and in my trade publications and in shows. And if I'm going to an expo or a conference, people are telling me this is important. But then I go back to my office and it's kind of, it's kind of not too dissimilar to the way it was last year. And, you know, but so it's difficult to sort of join the dots with that. And what we're kind of seeing a lot is that you come to the point about incremental change, is that the adaptability can sound kind of abstract, and digital change can sound abstract. But really what you're talking about is often lots of small changes over time, which allow you to avoid big changes. And I think this is the philosophy that the tech department is a company that helps manufacturing companies improve. And so how does a manufacturing business improve? Well, 80% of the time now it's around technology and digital tools and software. And so what we do is help leaders within that company navigate through that path. But the thing that we've learned that really works is small, measured stages, steps towards what we would call a North Star, like a direction of travel. And if you start making those changes today, then your adaptability is designed into that process, right?
Yes.
You don't need to do a big pivot, right? And it's like you have a magic bullet which changes your business forever, right? It's small changes. That is the adaptability, right? So it's kind of these abstract concepts like adaptability or transformation or digital or technology, or the king of all buzzwords, the fourth industrial revolution is a thing that a lot of people are talking about over here. And it's like, everybody, you read these buzzwords and you kind of say to yourself, what the heck's that?
Right.
Right. And that's a great response to have, because that's what I think, and I'm a professional in that space, right? So if you want to be adaptable, if you want to design your company to be ready for the future and to be perpetually ready, because the future is always changing, it's focusing on those small incremental changes. And maybe those changes are bigger than others, and maybe they're smaller than others, but each day, continuous improvement. And so our kind of mindset around that model, I think, marries neatly with a lot of other people like that.
What struck me about when I went through you have an ebook and
Yes,
we had chatted before, is that I want to talk about the converse, meaning how owners and the leaders in the manufacturing companies are being trained not to be adaptable, which is what you highlight about how projects are traditionally approached. So before we get into what works, maybe we can resonate with some of the listeners with
Hmm.
what doesn't work
Oh, yeah.
and why it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot. Let me just say that it's really, really easy to make a complete mess of your digital
I
stuff.
did it a number of times.
Oh, listen, I've done it, and we do it now, and we're, like I say, professional. I have a team, a small team, a boutique company. There's 15 people, but we're all professional technologists, and we continually make strategic errors of buying, installing, building our own technology. It's just hard. The reason is because, like, business is hard. You know, life is hard. The process of change in personally is unknowable until you've kind of done it. You can have a go and you can have a guess and a plan, but reality then hits you in the face, and that's what happens with digital. All right. So you have, I mean, we've all been there where you so you mentioned our ebook, right? And what we talk, the ebook is called "The Secret That Digital Consultants Don't Want You to Know." Right? Because what's taken me 15 years to work out running my business is that really, whilst technology is the sort of basic currency of the change, the thing you should focus on is not the technology, it's the improvement that the technology is going to create for you. All right, so that's the secret. But what happens is you will hire, if you're a growth-minded company, manufacturing business, you want to succeed, you want to achieve your goals. You'll know that technology is a thing, and you'll hire a consultant to come in and talk to you. And that consultant will get everybody excited, and they'll create a plan, which is beautiful. It's got so much blue sky everywhere, and you're so excited by this plan. And they put the plan on the table, and they leave the building, and you all kind of high five each other, and then nothing happens. Right? And so and then the alternative actually is you would go to a technology company, and the technology company has what we call a whiz-bang or whiz-bang technology. It's great. It solves this problem. It solves that problem. It's going to iron your shirts. It's going to pick up your kids from school. It's going to do all this crazy stuff for you and solve all your problems. And then they install that software, and then they disappear. And then 2 years later, you find that the technology isn't really doing what you thought it was going to do. In fact, it's perhaps creating more work for you and not less work. And perhaps it takes so much energy to maintain that it just soaks up a lot of time you could be with your customer. Or you just have to change your working method to fit it rather than it fits you. All that stuff. So you have this kind of experience where people go out to the market and they think that technology is the thing. So they hire technologists, so a consultant, to talk about technology as a future, or a technology company to install their whiz-bang technology to serve your company. But when they've gone through that process, it hasn't worked for them. And the reason, in our experience and in our opinion, the reason it hasn't worked is because you're starting from the wrong first principle, okay? The first principle you should always start with anything really in terms of any kind of change in your business, but particularly technology, is what is this going to improve, right? And why is that important to you, right? Because if you can't answer those two questions, you really, really shouldn't do the technology.
And I think it's as basic as a job shop will say, we need an ERP system.
Yeah.
And they probably do. But it is really stepping back and saying, why do I need an ERP system? What do I want that ERP system to do? And without that approach, the inclination would be, we need an ERP system. Let's go look at all the ERP systems that are out there for job shops, and we'll pick the best one.
Exactly.
But you're not starting with there may be a best one for the majority of shops, but your shop probably isn't in the majority, even though that doesn't sound right. And you have your own specific needs. What are those needs? Why do you want to put in an ERP system? What's failing?
Exactly that. And I think everybody's business is different. There may be common characteristics, but when you get inside it, it's always different. It's because of cultural reasons and historical reasons, and maybe legacy software and particular quirks to your service proposition. So you can't, and it's like kind of one size doesn't fit all, and often it's very specific. So if you start with those questions, it may be that so if you think about this as an experiment, right? So when so why do you want an ERP system? Well, the reason is you want to make your company more efficient, and you want to create better output. If you dig into that, there'll probably be specific parts of your business that are working less efficiently in your job shop than others. And it may be that the thing you want to, so your hypothesis in your experiment is that if you buy an ERP system, that your company will be more profitable and your customers will be happier and you can go to bed without being stressed or whatever, right? And so you're testing that. So you could go out and buy a piece of software that's the best on the market and install it, but it's a long time before you find out whether your hypothesis is true, right? It may be, but within that, there'll be certain other things you can test. So there may be just a change in how your team communicate. Maybe that's the first thing. Maybe there's a change in how the information is reported. And maybe you do it in a very simple integrated Excel spreadsheet first to just see if that very rough information is better than what you currently have.
As an owner, you may say, well, an ERP system will give me visibility in the shop. I'll be able to get all sorts of reports on what's going on. And perhaps that information is already collectible, but if you don't ask what are the key metrics that I need to know about for running my business, you won't know whether that ERP system will give you those metrics or not.
Exactly that. And I think this is the first principle. And it's not to say that an ERP system is bad to have or wrong. Of course not. And there's a reason why market leading software is market leading. But it doesn't mean it's sort of the right for you, specifically you at this point in time. And to your point, the first principle is, what information do you need? And where and how can you get that? And how is that going to influence your business? And if you can't answer those questions, all that's going to happen is you're going to get lost in a kind of wormhole that has no end, which is features and specifications and technologies that are new and all this kind of stuff. And you will be, if you're not a technologist, you will be very confused. And the decision will be made on, who's got the best salesperson or coolest looking brochure. It's kind of, you make decisions based on those kind of factors, and it's the wrong focus, the wrong emphasis. And really, so what we had, so our business is focused on doing that because it's the right thing to do, and I spent 13 years running this company where the game I was playing was not that. Okay, I was the guy trying to get you to spend your money on the clever custom ERP system with all the latest fancy bells and whistles on it. And we were very good at that, right? We have a great set of credentials, a great set of customers, and that's fun and whatever. But we had a moment a couple of years ago where we had a very bad year. We kind of lost a load of money, and it was a function of bad management. Really, we messed it up. In fact, it started on our 13th birthday. It was kind of like unlucky for some, number 13, and it all hit on and it was kind of a healthy thing to have happened. And I'm now really pleased that it did happen, although I wouldn't want to do it again. But what it forced us to do was to question our business from first principles, right? So I talk about this idea of first principles. Like, if you had a blank piece of paper, what would you do? Not what's there, what's the software, and so we looked at our business, and I said, hang on, we're selling something which people don't want, right? Right. What they want is improvement. What we're selling is technology. And those two things may intersect, right? But not always. And the game that I'm playing currently is to try and persuade you to spend as much money as possible without any commitment to improve, because that's a pain for me. And then I'm going to say goodbye, and then hopefully you'll spend more money with me again. right? And I kind of figured that I didn't like that game, and that's partly the reason we ended up with a big problem. And I said, I'm going to re-engineer our business around this fundamental insight that came from us having a terrible year, right? I thought I'm going to help companies improve, and particularly because where I'm based, and my company is based, is a city called Sheffield, which is in the north of England. And Sheffield has a very long history of industrial innovation. So stainless steel was innovated here, and there's a very long history of the steel industry and industry and manufacturing in general. And I kind of was talking to people saying, hey, listen, we've got this process we've created. We're calling it a tech boot camp, because if you go to a boot camp at a gym, it's like really hard and you have to work really hard, and it's a very short time. And at the end of it, you feel real good. And over time, you get fit, right? So we're calling this a tech boot camp because we're going to try and create improvement every day, right? It's going to be tough. It's going to be rough. It's going to be maybe a bit messy. Some days it may not work, but over time, that graph sort of ticks up, all right? So we had this concept, and then we found that the manufacturing companies, industrial companies, job shops were saying, hey, listen, we need improvement, right? And we've had these experiences where our fingers have been burnt by digital consultancies with their perfect plan and the blue sky thinking, and tech companies with their whiz-bang technology. And what we really could do with is somebody who can kind of just in plain English say, hey, that's not going to work, or that's great, or that's easy, or that's hard, you know? So what my company does is we're not consultants. We don't sell consultancy. We don't charge for any of the boot camp workshops that we run, because what we want to do is help companies in the manufacturing space in the UK and anywhere else really, is to release potential. It's like potential that's in your business that's trapped because you're still working in old ways, ways that can be modernized. That information, the data you talk about is trapped. It's not transparent. It's not clear. You can't make decisions quickly and clearly. And so you've got a vision of the future, but you're kind of stuck in the day-to-day. And what we're trying to do is help manufacturing companies day by day, every month, create improvements by improving their technology. And kind of our day-to-day work is we create custom web software, really. We're a software engineering company. So we would, help companies connect old software with new software, or create better e-commerce platforms, or run internal communication better, or get their quotes out faster, that kind of thing.
I like how you put the improvement around everyday problems. And
yes, yeah.
Quote, perfect example. ERP systems have a quoting and estimating module typically because they have to have one, but it's not the core of their system, and it is often cumbersome to use.
Yeah.
So you have a choice. Do you put in a whole bunch of extra keystrokes and work around your ERP system to send your quotes out of that? Or do you use Excel or QuickBooks or both and say, okay, only the orders that I win, I will put into my ERP system, but then you're retyping the information in. And of course, whenever you retype something in, the mistakes will be made. It's not a question, will they? They will. That's going to happen. So in systems that don't connect, you have CAM software that doesn't necessarily connect with the shop floor systems. And another example with the ERP systems is they have a very limited contact management software, CRM software, because they have to. And I remember the system we used, I'm trying to remember, I think it had a limit of 10 characters.
Oh, really?
As a code per customer. So we would have a customer, a Fortune 100 company, say, let's say General Electric, GE, and we were working with dozens of their divisions. So so I had to take the first two characters, GE, because sometimes it would come in as GE, sometimes it wouldn't, but they were a GE company. And the limitations of the ERP system relating to the contact management. So I'll share a story. We actually, at Rapid, we were using Salesforce, and Salesforce was a great tool for us because we had in-house developers who could customize it to what we were doing. And the volume, we put out over 100,000 unique line item quotes a year.
Wow.
And that was all managed through Salesforce. It enabled our sales team. So we love the cloud approach of Salesforce. And our ERP system was a desktop-based application. So we said, wouldn't it be great if our ERP system was on the cloud and it was connected to Salesforce? So we went out and we looked, and there was a cloud-based ERP system that was totally integrated into Salesforce. But we had been burnt enough times by then, so we used your approach with incremental steps, and we tested it in a siloed area where it couldn't create any harm. We used it in our smallest operating division, and we ran it parallel, and we kept taking steps. We created goals, and if we accomplished those goals, we went to the next step.
Right.
And we got to the point, though, where, as you say, 2 years down the road, you find out something's not working. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty of the system, and we found some roadblocks that just we could not overcome with that system. So we bought the software, we invested between their integration fees and our own internal people, several $100,000 in this attempt at bringing in a cloud-based ERP system. And ultimately we said, as much as we would prefer to be on the cloud, this is not the best way to go. And we remain with our desktop-based ERP system.
Really? Yeah, it's interesting. The moral in that story is, I think that there's a few things in there are interesting, but the number one takeout for that for me is the devil is in the details, right? These things are kind of, it can be great, oh, not so great. Yeah, and so you oftentimes with technology, it sort of looks and maybe is good, but then the business evolves, or you find you need it to do something very specific and it just can't do it. But until you kind of get into the weeds, it's difficult to know that in advance. And so this illustrates the challenge you face as an organization, I think. And I think what we've kind of, where we kind of have seen is this sort of iterative approach really helps with that, because otherwise unless you're measuring this thing all the way through and being mindful of this kind of potential pitfall, then it can create real challenges.
I want to mention one other thing, that it also, beyond the technology, it enabled us to see how responsive that company was to us and the changes we wanted to make, and how able they were to make the changes even if they wanted to. Yes. And what we found out was that they could or would not support the basic changes we needed, which we thought other manufacturers would need. And the human relationship, even though we're talking technology, it all comes down to people.
Sure, yeah.
That was a great learning experience and worthwhile, because everything sounds great while you're dating, but
that's it. Yeah, exactly. And there's technology salespeople are really great salespeople.
They are.
And every damn technology website you'll go to is cool looking and slick, and everything's like coming in nice animations, and everyone's laughing in the photos, and You know, it looks beautiful.
You want to work there.
Yeah, but yeah, wow, look at all these attractive people having fun. I want to do that. So you kind of, it's very seductive. I mean, we did it. I'll tell you a story. We about 10 years ago, we licensed some cloud software for project management. We said, we're going to do this properly now. We're going to invest in this software. And it was this software is billed as the simple, it's like designed for kind of, I guess, creative or technology companies, that service businesses that are doing projects, custom projects. Anyway, cut a long story short, after 2 years, we'd implemented this thing and realized that it was just it wasn't simple. Like it was actually, it was simple relative to perhaps other software. I don't know, maybe Microsoft project, but it wasn't simple. And our team, who was supposed to be looking after our customers, was spending all of their time administering the software. So we became like a kind of the inverse relationship that you should have with technology. Instead of the technology serving our interests and our needs and our team and our customers, we were serving it, right? And it became really apparent one day, you know, like we kind of, we really tried for 2 years to be diligent and do it properly. And then we realized, hang on, this is crazy. We're not talking to our customers. We're administering the system. Just junk the system, right? But it took us 2 years to do that because you have this sunk cost thing, right? Where you've invested the time to find and specify and commission the work. You invest the time to train your team. You invest the time to learn on it and to manage your business through it. And then it's like the dating thing. You don't want to give up. Maybe she will marry me. You know, maybe it's all going to work out like roses and flowers and happy forever after. And you keep going, and then it just, yeah. So like I say, no one is immune from this. You know, it's very risky making change. It's very risky commissioning technology, and the risk isn't apparent until you're 2 or 3 years in, because you'll never get that time back. You know, the cost is one thing, but the sunk time is another.
Let's stop here though, because we're probably scaring off all the job shop owners who want to implement change in technology, but now they're throwing their hands up going, wow, if the technology implementer is getting burnt, what chance do I have? But you have developed a specific process which it won't guarantee success, but it helps find those roadblocks and the obstacles to success, and that you put that into what you call the tech boot camp. And would you go through that for me, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and what I would say is the lesson here is not, it's difficult and risky, therefore don't do it. All right. We started the conversation saying that the future of all business is digital, and that is true. Right. The question isn't you have to do it, right? The question, therefore, is how you do it. All right. And so part of the reason we're having this conversation actually is my mission and our mission as a company is to help people to not make those mistakes. Right. It's like anything in life, business is complicated. Life is complicated. There's lots of things to go wrong, but you still do it. And so technology is a great opportunity, and there are some challenges to be aware of. So the reason we created this tech bootcamp process, which by the way, you can download all of this in detail, like literally how we run this process, all from our website, which is the tech department, or THETECHDEPT.com. We've posted it on there, and it's free to download, and we genuinely want to help people, but help job shops to not make these mistakes. All right. So it's a 5-step process, and it's very simple. The first step is mindset. Okay, and this actually comes to your point about fear and complexity and worry about that. Okay, if you see this as a cost as opposed to an investment, then you've got the wrong mindset. All right. Now, you need to view your relationship with technology within your job shop like you view your team or your strategy or your customers. It's a long-term relationship. It's a long-term process. It's a long-term thing that's going to evolve over time. And you've got to see, therefore, all the money you spend and the time you spend, not as wasted time if it doesn't work, but as investments in understanding what does work and what doesn't work and what's going to be appropriate for you. Specifically you, at specifically this time, with specifically your customers, and specifically what's going to happen to you in the future, which is always different to every other company, right? So all that experience I've had with my experience with that technology, that's taught me why it's so important to teach the other people. Because if I make that mistake, everybody else is going to make that mistake, right? So these are all data points on the path to success, right?
So it gets back to in the cost versus investment. You can make good investments, you can make bad investments.
Yes.
You will make both,
yes.
But you have to view them as investments. And if you do make a bad investment, it's only I'll call it a terrible investment if you don't learn anything from it. Because
exactly.
bad investment, you want to take away lessons learned so you don't make that same bad investment again.
Exactly, and you do that with your team.
Mm-hmm.
You do that with your strategies and your marketing campaigns and with your customers. Technology is the same. It's a thing you can't, it's very rare you're going to get it right on day one and then that's it forever. That doesn't happen. It's not a magic bullet, right? It's a relationship, it's a process, it's a strategy, it's a multifaceted thing. So that's your mindset. Because if you don't have that, then frankly, it's going to be a very big it's going to be a series of very difficult disappointments for you, and you'll just get frustrated. So first of all, work on your mindset. And the second thing you should do is, once you have your view of the world and you're seeing it as a series of investments you're making, is to create a plan. Okay, now a very simple plan. And so the reason you need a plan is because otherwise you end up buying technology based on what looks cool, right? Which may not be the same thing as what works for your job shop strategically. So a plan isn't 6 months and it's not beautiful and it's not blue sky everywhere and 1,000 pages of text, right? It's not a kind of digital consultancy plan. We run our planning workshops. We call them a tech bootcamp workshop in 90 minutes. And if we're being really posh, we're going to do them in 2 hours. You don't need to spend a lot of time, right? And in our ebook, you have all the questions you need to ask yourself. And really what you got to do is go back to first principles, like I talked about. Just say, okay, what am I looking to do and we use an 18-month framework. Like in 18 months time, what has to have improved for my customers or my company or my team? Because in 18 months time, it's kind of near enough to see it, but it's not kind of so close that you haven't had time to do something. And if you work that out and then sort of start write down what the answers are and then ask yourself a few other questions about, what's important and what's going to get in the way. And then you ask yourself, okay, what are the things I haven't done so far that I really wish I had done? Like areas of procrastination almost, right? And out of that list, because everybody has a list of things they haven't done or they wish they had done. If you decide, okay, what's the number one thing I should do, right? That's a plan. Right? Yeah. It's a plan. You don't need any more than that. You can do it in 90 minutes. You can do this in half an hour if you feel like, want to sweat it. It's a series of questions and you can work out, it really is dead easy. You just go, okay, where do we want to go? We call that a North Star. Okay. When you see on our website, we visualize our boot camp as a graphic, as a star, like a 5-pointed star. And we do that because in the planning phase, we create what we call a North Star. That's an 18-month vision of the future, a direction of travel. Okay, and so if you're gonna, you don't need to know every crater on the moon to know which direction to walk towards the moon. Right. So quick plan, because that's you can't get there in one day. So what we then say, once we've got our plan, we're going to work out what's the simplest thing we can do for the biggest impact and the least amount of cost in time and resource and money to step towards that North Star, the vision of the future, the direction of travel. And then we're going to measure the impact of that activity. Right? And once you've measured it, you know whether you've moved away from or towards your North Star.
So
Uh,
before we get to the measure,
yeah,
and actually going back to the plan, what I see as in the plan is that you want to be intentional.
exactly that.
And the way that you get intentional, like you asked why over and over. I think it's the 5 whys.
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
asked, you ask somebody the question, you ask them why, and they give you an answer, but why that? And you keep asking why, and you get down to some pretty basic things that don't get uncovered. So being intentional is the plan, but in the action, that's the how. And
Yes.
the part of the action and the how is who is going to do it. And the depending on the size of the job shop and their comfort, I guess, with technology, is it something that you could do in-house, or you want to hire somebody to do it in-house, or are you going to go outside? And the who is either a company who's already developed that product who can perhaps modify it for you, or someone like yourself who will create a custom product for you and have the skill sets that you don't have in-house and don't want to have in-house.
Exactly. And again, so once you have the why and you know what you want to try and create, then it's like, it's simple. You just ask, I mean, like, this is how I got my break, right? My boss said, do you want to do it? And I said, yes. All right. So maybe there's somebody sat in your job shop right now, and you just need to give them a break. Maybe they can do that, you know, and if you understand what the problem is you're trying to fix, and you've got some ideas it's an experimentation, right? And maybe they try something, and maybe you get somewhere and you need to hire somebody else. And that could be somebody, a freelance contractor. There's many of those on the internet. It could be a company like mine who can create something custom. It could be a startup. It could be a software product. It could be Microsoft. It could be anything. The point is, if you have a clear understanding of what you're trying to do and why, then who is going to work out how to do it becomes much easier to work out, right?
I want to share at Rapid for the listener how we got started with technology. And it was a fellow named Steve Lynch, and he was running the engineering department, and we were using SolidWorks. And we had tons and tons of keystrokes. As a matter of fact, enough clicks on the mouse button that he started to get carpal tunnel syndrome.
Really?
So we weren't going to take away the mouse. Those existed. So we gave Steve the permission we bought him a macro mouse, a programmable mouse, and we allowed him to create macros so he could push one button and eliminate 5, 10, maybe 50 keystrokes. And it was so funny, yet frustrating, because we would be watching him and then the folks who worked for him sitting back in their chairs, watching their computer screen run automated macros for 5, 10 minutes.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I'm paying these guys to watch the computer screen, but it was much, much faster than them clicking the mouse themselves. And of course, his carpal tunnel syndrome went away. But that was how we started, because the macros just became too convoluted, too inefficient. And Steve used that time while the mouse was running. We gave him another computer, and he started learning the SolidWorks API, so the API we could create the same things the macros were doing in the SolidWorks API. But exactly what you're talking about, it was a who internally, but we had to give that permission to them.
And I think what's interesting there is it's a great case study of experimentation, play. Right? You had a vision of the future, a North Star, and maybe that North Star was you want to fix his carpal tunnel syndrome, right?
Yeah.
That's a plan. I say that's my direction of travel. Okay, so how
Yeah.
are we going to do that? We're going to get you a programmable mouse, and we're going to let you do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you take a step then towards the future, which becomes digital or automation or whatever you want to call that. Now, maybe that step was slightly inefficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus where you ended up, right? But it was the first step. And in like all journeys start with a single step, right? And it's like kind of, you're never going to hit a straight line towards your vision of the future. It's always a zigzaggy line. You know, you look back and you think, wow, if only I knew what I knew now, then I would have wasted far less time, right? But that's experience and that's life. So if you accept that and embrace that and make small steps like you did, and create the gap and the opportunity to find who's going to fill that. And if you go out to the market, instead of going to the market and saying, hey, we want technology, give me your best stuff. All right. And then you're just drowned in information that may or may not be relevant. You say, hey, listen, we need to fix this specific problem in this specific software for this specific context, and you have a much better understanding of what decisions you need to make, because you can go back to your North Star and you can go back to and say, look, this is the problem we're trying to fix and why, and then you can judge whether it's a simple solution or a complex solution or an in-house solution or an external solution. That's the kind of impact. That's the empowering thing with this, really, is when the things I have learned in an entire career since 1997 of building web applications and custom software is, it's not about the technology, it's about the improvement. And if you don't have that clear in your mind all the time, what do you want to
improve?
If you don't have that in your mind all the time, you're going to go off track, right? And it's a complex, multifaceted, confusing space to work in. But actually, it's really simple, right? You just need to improve the thing, right?
Yes.
And if everybody does that, then we're good, right? But the problem is what happens is you commission a technological person and they then ask you all these technology questions and you don't know. So you're like, and then you say some stuff back to them and they go, yes, boss. And then they create something which they go, well, you told me to.
Right.
And then you're like, well, I'm not an expert. And they say, well, you're the boss. Yeah. And then there's this kind of feedback loop of doom, you know, and like I say, part of this is to say, look, listen, the trick is there's no trick, right? All these techie people, of which I am one, well, so part of I'm sort of picking a fight with digital consultants, because I'm like, listen, you guys you don't get paid for simplicity, right? Consultants get paid for complexity and the amount of hours they charge and looking clever and, you know, all this kind of good stuff, you know, and I'm not going to, you know, there's lots of my friends are consultants. I'm not, but what you want and what a job shop owner wants isn't complexity, isn't time with a consultant. They want to have really happy customers and a really happy team and a fantastic output in their business. And they want to have an easy life and loads more money and have a great stress-free home environment. That's what you want. That's what I want. That's what I think everybody would like that. So technology should deliver that, in my opinion. All right. If you focus on improvement first, you have a fighting chance of creating that. If you don't, you get lost in the complexity and it can become a real quagmire.
We've nailed down the action. We're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And the next step of the process, which you started to touch upon, was measure.
Absolutely. So the measurement part often gets, well, right. When you say measurement or data to people automatically start to think about quantum physicists, like doing big data and analyzing lots of information. But data measurement isn't complicated, or it doesn't have to be complicated. The key thing to do when you're going to measure something is to not do it at the end, is to start your thinking at the start. So you mentioned about the intention. Okay, so the first intention is your kind of North Star and then your first step towards the North Star. But before you start your step, you need to work out, okay, specifically what in this step is going to indicate improvement. How are we going to measure that? So that doesn't, and then where people get stuck on this is they kind of go, oh yeah, but I've got no analytics, and oh my God. Right. If your team is unhappy with the software now, and afterwards they are happy, that's measurement, right?
Yeah.
It's qualitative data, right? So you can get caught up in this a lot and go, oh yeah, how are we going to measure it? And who am I don't have the data scientist on hand to work this out. Listen, it's really easy. Is it better or not? Yes or no? Okay, that's data. Now, when you get more advanced and you have analytics packages and all that kind of good stuff, yes, you can get really complicated. And yes, of course, if you have that information, maybe sensors on your machinery, and you're plotting the shift patterns and how it all interrelates in terms of productivity, yes, you can get very complicated. But what I'm trying to do here is get people to not be intimidated by this stuff. Right? So measuring improvement, it has many factors. But before you start the step, think about, hey, what indicators do we have or can we find that are going to give us some sense of whether we're moving in the right direction or not, right? And so you write them down, and we have a thing we call an improvement scorecard. And an improvement scorecard is a grid. You can create this in Microsoft Word, and on the left-hand side, you put the up to 5 things you're going to measure. So your team's perception is one measurement. Maybe sales is another, or email signups on your website, whatever it is. Like maybe there's a number of things you could measure. But let's just say 2 or 3 things. And you have some data points right now, or maybe you don't have any. It's a brand new thing. So your data point would be, Jay, what do you think of our CRM platform? Well, I hate it. Okay, that's a data point. Afterwards, well, how do you feel about it now? Well, I love it. Okay, that's a data point. Right? We can measure that. And so you have a grid. In your grid, you have a 3 up to 5. So in your grid, on the left-hand side, you have up to 5 things you're going to measure. And then you have a column that has the benchmark piece of information or data.
It sounds like coming up with measurements is almost part of the plan. And because if it's what you're measuring is what you are deciding is important.
Absolutely. So it's kind of what we would do is we create the plan first, and then when we get really granular, when we're taking the action, that's when you can do this at the plan stage, but oftentimes,
well,
the thing you're going to...
I was thinking at the action stage too, if you don't know what you're going to measure, then you may not have the ability to measure it, depending upon what it is, but also who's ever taking the action, knowing how they're going to be measured is pretty important.
Oh yeah, it's critical. Because so here's the thing. So when we do our planning workshop, we sort of get a slightly more broad brushstroke. It's the direction of travel and the first thing to focus on. Then when we move into our action phase, the first thing we do is to get really granular on precisely how we're going to do this. All right. So at that point, that's when we fill in our improvement scorecard. Now, it's critical at that point because if you have a team of people working on something, and particularly if these people are technical people, like technologists, they will get lost in the weeds, right? And there are a billion things that are really important to do on every technology project. But there are only certain things that are essential for you to get right on that technology project. So the way we work it is when we start a project and it goes to our development team, we have a sheet of paper. On that sheet of paper, it says the customer's North Star. It says the success criteria for that project. And then we have the improvement scorecard. And that sits on everybody's desk. And if that developer, the web developer, is noodling on some technical problem that they find fascinating, and they have a particular, this happens all the time. There's like a billion things to work on. There's one particular thing that this particular guy has got an absolute bee in his bonnet. He's like, I'm going to crack it. I'm going to crack this problem. But it just so turns out that problem, whilst good to fix, isn't essential to the North Star, to the success criteria that we're trying to get, the success we're trying to get out of that particular project and the improvement scorecard. We say, listen, deprioritize that. I know you want to fix it, but listen, take a deep breath, focus
Mhm.
on the important thing and fix that first, right? Because this other thing, we can worry about that later, right? Because it's
Mhm.
not critical to get the improvement. And that's just a one example of how, you use these intentions to guide behavior and to prioritize behavior in a complex, multifaceted world, right? So everybody in plain English can go back to first principles and say, look, the direction of travel is this way and not that way. The things we're trying to produce here are here, and here we're going to measure them. So we just crack. It means that measurement stage is baked into the start of the process, not the end. So when
Right.
so what happens is you create your thing, your CRM tool, and it's live. And at a certain point after it's live, you go back to your scorecard and you say, hey, Jay, previously you said you hated your CRM. Now, how do you feel about it? And then we write down what you said. And then we maybe measure the speed, the time it takes for you to take a particular task, or the data you can get out of it, or the performance of the sales team, or whatever we would do to sort of measure the impact of that particular boot camp. So at that point, we're measuring the impact.
Mhm.
And then here's the important thing of the measure stage, right? So measuring the data, great. But that's only half of the job. The other half of the job at the measure stage is to take action on the data. Okay?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so you're going to take, you have, in the world of startups and tech world, people talk about actionable metrics,
Mhm.
right? So you have data, you've measured it. The question is what you're going to do with it. And so, because never is your business finished, it can always
Right.
be further improved. So the concept within our bootcamp model is you get your mindset right, you get a quick plan, you take focused action, which you measure, and the measurement gives you guidance for the next bootcamp, the next set of action. All right.
So it's a continuous process.
It's absolutely, yes, a continuous improvement process. And so in our experience, if you do that every day, like if you go to the gym and did a boot camp every day, you're going to get fitter. It's just that's what happens. You will be digitally fitter, and it's simpler and more straightforward, and it's less. I mean, listen, we can always make mistakes, all right? But there's less chance of you falling down one of these potholes that exist in the digital world if you follow that method. And it's simple and easy, and it's just something that we've learned over 15 years, and now we're kind of sharing that and applying that for our clients and helping them improve.
And again, it's outlined in your ebook. I downloaded it, printed it out, and beyond even technology, it's just a good process for implementing improvements in your company. They may not be technology related, but you can use the same process.
Yeah, it's funny because we designed it for technology, but actually it's good for anything. And we for what it's worth, we use this process for our personal development. Now we have a system where we just do it on the same. All of our team have their own personal North Star, and each 90 days we work towards us achieving their North Star goal. And so we are aligning our company and our team using our process for developing technology.
Well, that says it right there, because if you're not using your own tools, then you're not showing that you really believe in them.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about a little more on the who. And let's say you decide you want to go outside to have that person or company help you implement your plan. They are going to take the action. Most of our listeners are not in the UK and wouldn't be able to work with you, perhaps even if they wanted to. But even beyond that, let's just, in a broader sense, how do you hire a tech someone, a company or a person to help you with the action? Where do people make mistakes, and what sort of questions you ask? I'm a job shop owner listening. I want to make the right decision.
Okay, that's a great question. And here's the thing that I'll tell you what's difficult is hiring. Sometimes people think, okay, I need to use technology. I'm going to hire a web designer or or a web developer or a technologist. That is superficially easy, and in practice is very hard. Because there's lots and lots of different types of technology out there, and it's often rare you can find that within one person. And also, it's a different management skill, running a team of developers. I mean, you've done this, and you will have had experience of this. It's a quite a different skill set. That, again, that's not to say you shouldn't do it, but it's something before you start to do it, you need to be aware that it's not as easy as perhaps it first looks. I know this because my first company was a branding business. We helped do brand design for people. I employed a lot of graphic designers, and graphic designers are notoriously difficult to manage. They're quite kind of
even more difficult than software developers.
No, they're not. They're actually easier than software developers, and which is to I sold that business, and then I kind of was building the tech department, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be. I'll just do the same process. I'll hire these people, and we'll get. And it was a different thing. Culturally, they're different, and they're harder, actually, much harder than graphic designers. And I got my fingers burnt a lot with that. And so you have to have a particular kind of. It's a thing in and of itself. So it's not as easy as hiring a couple of graphic designers and then your marketing is all sorted. You have to sort of treat it with respect. That's not to say you shouldn't do it. But again, with intention, go into that kind of thinking and think it through.
What sort of questions should they be asking in the process?
So say, okay, whether it's an internal, hiring for somebody internal or somebody external, you should, it's a relationship. And the questions you should be asking should firstly, and this is why we start with mindset in our bootcamp process, is they need to be on the same page as you, all right? So they may be technically brilliant, but if they don't share values that you have, it's not going to work, right? It's really easy. It's easy into these things. It's easy to hire a technologist. It's easy to buy a technology. It's very difficult to get out of it, right? You're kind of easy in,
super hard to get out of it.
Yeah, it's like really treat that with respect and treat that in the same way you would go into a business partnership. Again, without trying to dramatize it too much, just be careful that you don't like get seduced by somebody's great product and then you stuck with it. And these guys are difficult and they're not collaborative and they're not going to work with you. So treat that, again, the mindset alignment, the values alignment. How, are you really going to work well with these people? And that's actually the number one thing. Right? I mean, from the other side, all the problems we have with customers, our clients, are when they don't share our mindsets, right? If they see this as if they're sort of, you know, it's, by the nature of this thing, it's a collaborative and creative process. Often it's lots of shades of gray, right? So you need to have a relationship where you can nuance this and where your customer isn't demanding things that they perceive to be true because you did it quite quickly and they've misread a line of text in a statement of work or the contract, right? Similarly, you don't want a supplier saying, hey, Jay, you told me it was going to be this and I've done it like this and that was my interpretation. So, you know, I'm sorry, it's going to cost you the same again to tweak that. You need to have an ebb and flow, all right? So there's a kind of, sometimes you're going to need to wiggle and change things a little bit and you don't want too contractual a relationship. And again, often the technology people can be quite zero sum. You know, you want to find someone who's going to work with you, whether that they're hired by, whether you hire them as a staff member or employee, or whether you're hiring them as a contractor. And then, of course, it comes down to the technical capability and precisely what you're doing. But I would look for, if you go back to the bootcamp model, it's the mindset. And then the sort of intention, all right? If you feel that the people are trying to sell you on their thing, irrespective of what you're saying, don't do it, right? So you know this, you know when you're with a salesperson and they're kind of guiding you down the path and you're trying to get out of the path and they're guiding you back down the path. Just don't go there, right? Even if it looks great and everybody else uses the software, it's just like, it's an alarm bell that should be ringing for you. And And I think this is the thing. It's like all the problems with technology that I've ever come across, ever, from 1997 through to today, has come from decisions made at the start, right? If you make a little decision, if you make a decision wrong at the start, it's a big, like a hairline fracture at the start of a project is a yawning chasm by the end, right? It's over time, these problems compound. And then you spend your entire life fixing things that you thought you misunderstood at the start of the process. So it's kind of, you know, and all of this, again, so here's another thing around communication, actually thinking about it. So the mindset, the values, the capability, the sort of the working for you, not you for them, but the communication is really critical, right? I mean, literally all the problems we have as a company in our service delivery to customers come from a misunderstanding of really what people are saying right at the start. Yeah.
Do you have, let's say you have a large project, do you have discrete measurable steps along the way where the path can, I don't want to say necessarily change, but meander a little towards that North Star?
Yeah.
Or is it, well, how do you feel about if a company just says, here's the deliverable, which is one of the words they use, and there's no intermediate steps along the way to prove that you're...
Yeah, you really want to break it down. So what I would look for is someone who's going to, again, there's no magic bullets, right? Even if it's a small step, there's a process to go through and you should be involved in that process. So you can't, like, if someone wants to be a hero and say, leave it with me, I'll come back when it's all completed, don't work with them, right? And that happens whether you're internal within your company or external, right? It's a collaborative, it should be transparent, it should be open. So the way that we do it is we would run our workshop, we create a plan, we have a North Star, and we have a first step towards it. But that step is multifaceted, all right? And there'll be a process to understand the deliverables and the requirements and the technical architecture that we're looking at and the time frame and the people and the communications process and all that stuff. And we document that in what we call a statement of work, which is kind of like the contract, the detailed contract. And then that will have specific deliverable time frame in it. And then we have a workflow within that, which is design, develop, test, launch. And the design phase is collaborative and open, has several stages, and we discuss that. So before we code anything, we know precisely the user journey, the user experience that the person using it is going to experience. And we've discussed that with our client, so they're happy with that. And we've looked at the visual look and feel, and we know how that's going to be laid out. And then we make it. But we don't make anything until we know that that's the right thing to do, and we can test that in a flat format. Because otherwise, once you start again, it's like building a house, right? If you say, "Hey, listen, we don't need those architects. Hey, it's bricks and stuff, yeah. Okay, like builders, just build it, make it happen, go for it." And then you come home and they've built it, and it's all made of breeze blocks and kind of ugly kind of rendering, and you know they've not finished the roof, right? And you go, "Hey, where's the roof and why are the ugly bricks?" And they go, "Well, you said build it and here it is." Right? So unless you specify what you want and have an understanding of what that's going to look like, you are likely to end up with your ugly house, right? And then you've got to knock the ugly house down and build it again. So the point is transparency, openness, collaboration, being involved in the process very much is what you want to be. You want to be looking for that, because you need to be involved, and and you have to be open to take direction from the supplier. Again, another thing I would look for actually is if a lot of technology people like to be told what to do, right? You don't want that. You want someone who's going to push back on your ideas, who's going to be able to lead, right? One of the things we pride ourselves on in my company is, you know your business and you have a clear idea, but that doesn't mean you're always right. Okay? And I'm not disrespecting anybody we work with. What I'm saying is that, listen, sometimes you need to take counsel from your supplier. And so there's an interplay there. So you want someone who's going to give you that counsel, but you need to be prepared to listen.
So if they're not pushing back at the proposal stage and saying this isn't a good idea,
they don't have to, but what is a
is
tell?
it worthwhile almost throwing out something ludicrous to see if they push back?
It's an interesting concept. Yeah, why not? I mean, in some ways, what you want to find is you don't want a bunch of yes men, right? Because all you're going to happen is like I said earlier in the conversation, it's really easy for you to give a bunch of instruction and get something back that's like not going to work. And the tech guy can go, hey, you told me what to do. You know, so again, the building analogy works because the architect will design your building, right? Then you need a team to build the building. Right. You don't; those builders are not the people to be designing it, right? And you also want an architect that's going to take your vision and make it real. So you got to there's a sort of so there's lots of communication, values, leadership. Again, these are things to look for, because if you don't have those, again, it's really easy for you to create your own problem, just inadvertently. And all the while along, the tech guy goes, yes, boss, yes, boss, yes, boss. And then you're stuck with a thing that doesn't work.
So I think you have given us some good insights there on questions to ask, the mindsets, the values that you need to share, and that's a good starting point. I want to sort of go 180, and we've talked a lot about your ebook, but the job shop owners want to increase sales. And
yeah, sure.
How has the ebook worked out for you from a marketing perspective? Why did you do it, and what's been the result?
Well, it's actually a relatively new thing. We've only published it a couple of weeks ago. I'll tell you, here's why we did it. Actually, this is classic. So we went to a trade show in the UK called the Smart Factory Expo, and this is a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, what am I going to talk about? And we talk about our bootcamp thing, and we've been running this for a couple of years. And I thought, well, at least I need something a bit more substantive. And so I started writing, and then it became this 4,000 words that I've wrote. And I've basically the thinking behind it is we genuinely want to help manufacturers, job shop owners release potential. The way that we're going to do that is by sharing what we've learned. All right, like I said at the start, we're not consultants. We're not a consultancy. I'm not interested in charging money for this knowledge. I want to share it for free. And, if we can get some work out of that, that's great. But the way it's working for us is it's a fantastic conversation piece. It's what we call a social object. People go, okay, great. And they can see our thinking, and they can sample it. And if we can help them, improve their company, then we're here, and they know what we can do for them. So to your answer, it's we're trying to kind of live some of those values. Like we're trying to communicate. We're trying to be transparent. We're trying to be collaborative. We're trying to show that we've got some skin in the game here. We're going to give you that knowledge, right? So we're kind of playing it forward, really. We're saying, look, this is by the way, the ebook is just legitimately the process that we follow internally. That's all I've done. We've written down in fact, we already was written down. What I've done is shared our kind of internal training manual and polished it up a little bit and put it on the internet, right? So this is legitimately what we do. It's a kind of not a marketing document. It's a genuine operational document. And it's all in there, all the questions, all the workshops, the improvement scorecard, the questions you want to ask, a whole bunch of stuff I've learned. And so it's great for us from a marketing communication point of view. And it shows, we've already, what's happening with this is, and a general principle, by the way, is the more information or more sharing you can give to your customer, the more you're proving the quality of your product, the product of your service.
That is what I am learning, that content is huge. That is the way to market today, because people are going to the web for information. And if you can put the right content that resonates with them, then you've got a shot at winning their business. So
Exactly
I
that.
think,
Yeah.
Dan, this is a good place to wrap up. I really appreciate you being here today. I thought that the review running through your tech boot camp was hugely helpful
Great.
and learned some stuff there. I thought that our conversation at the beginning on adaptability was fun, and it's part of technology. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
glad that Ross and his team are putting together the tools to help us measure it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. And actually, I think this whole thing around technology is there's a great quote from Peter Thiel, the guy who founded PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
In his book, 0 to 1, he says that properly understood, any new way of doing things is technology. Right? So adaptability is technology. Mindset is technology. My 5-step bootcamp process is a form of technology. It's a tool. And all you've got to do is use these tools to your business. That's what technology is. So, you know, it's kind of, it's been a great conversation. Really, I've been really enjoyed it, and we've covered a lot of ground, and it made me think about a few things myself. So that's been a great connection. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun. And I like the shift in my thinking. If I'm a job shop owner, I want to ask now, what do I need to improve? And more importantly, why do I need to
Yes,
improve
absolutely.
it? And then I can start thinking about the action items to do that. Anything else you would like to add, Dan, before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, if people are interested in my company, it's well, I'm sure you can share the URL
Right.
on the description. It's
But go ahead, give your website.
It's the techdept.com, techdepartment.com. And on there, you can find, well, a little bit more about our company, and you can get the ebook there for free. And yeah, check us out. And I'm on Twitter at the Dan Kirby. So if you fancy seeing me
Kirby
on Twitter.
is Kirby.
That's right. Yeah. So the Dan Kirby. In fact, I'm the Dan Kirby on all social media. If you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and everywhere else in between.
Super.
Great.
Listeners, thanks for taking the time to share your day with us. We are getting a lot of positive feedback, and we'd appreciate you getting the word out about the Job Shop Show. If you like the show, let your friends and coworkers know about us. And until next time, maximize your uptime and keep those spindles turning and those lasers cunning. Have a great day.